Hello, everybody. Welcome to our final podcast for the 2020 year. Happy to be able to go and see 2020 leave. It's been a real rough one on so many different levels. Our final podcast, as we usually have with our final podcast for every month, we get into today some diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice issues, topics, and how it relates to organizational alignment and what you as a leader and what your organization can go and do to be able to leverage greater diversity, equity, and inclusion to drive alignment and performance of your overall organization. And what we have today is really interesting. We have our CEO, Art Johnson, being interviewed on a radio program run by Shaletta Brundage, a marvelous radio personality and individual for WCCO Radio here in the Twin Cities. And the two of them get to discussing a little bit about what diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural competency around each of those really mean, and then how it can be measured and analyzed in organizations to be able to go and help drive greater alignment and greater performance. What's really interesting to me in this conversation that Art has with Shaletta is this aspect of being open to possibilities, to situations. Shaletta talks about her little brother, who when he was growing up got held back from the second grade, but then had a black teacher the next year that recognized that her brother wasn't lazy as he was labeled the year before, but he needed glasses. And it made me think, aside from the aspect of looking at someone's color or their sexual orientation or their religious affiliation or where they come from on the socioeconomic or even geographical context, that true leaders, really good leaders and really good human beings, take the time to be able to go and adjust their perspective and try and see what's really going on with that child or that coworker or that customer. Ask the right questions. Open up to the possibilities. Now, Shaletta's brother, I'm sure, has gone on to do some great things, just like she has. And this conversation also got me to thinking about something that some friends at a company called the Afila Group come up with that talks about the 5% that really goes and drives revolutionary and evolutionary impacts and change. In organizations, 95% of what gets done, the people, the processes, the technologies, the strategies, it's all the same. There may be some nuances where there's some different things with one organization that's better or worse than another organization. But in the aggregate, 95% of everything that gets done in organizations is the same. You have HR and accounting and marketing and product development, and they all basically do similar things, similar ways. But it's that 5%, the ability to see what the nuances and mutations are, including alignment to mission and vision, that go and take organizations to the next level. And we're seeing that within a COVID environment, that organizations have had to adapt, evolve, to be able to go and address what's going on. And it confounds me, quite honestly, that organizations do not quite see to the context and level that they should, that people of other ethnic origins, genders, and women, they're included and they have a bunch of representation, but they really aren't seen the same. They aren't paid the same. They aren't in the leadership positions in the same ways that they are in traditionally female roles. Black, white, brown, LGBTQ, Muslim, Jewish, Sikh. This diversity of thought, of background, of insight, just like the white man right possibly next to you, see things differently than you because he was brought up a bit differently. And if you're a white man or even a white woman, you may say things and be able to connect it. It's still different perspective. Taking the perspectives of Black, Indian, people of color, the same manner, with even though it's a little bit more diverse, unique in terms of perspective, that can be the absolute mutation or nuance that you as a leader and your organization needs to be able to go and fulfill your mission that much more impactfully. So I challenge you for 2021. Look at yourself as a leader. How do you specifically handle things yourself in terms of being able to embrace other points of view, other cultural viewpoints, people from other different origins and backgrounds and histories? And then how are you leading teams, other leaders, to be able to proactively and openly look for that nuance and mutation to be able to go and find out the new possibilities? And if you're leading entire organizations, how does that get weaved into everything that gets done? Greater cultural competency around diversity, equity, and inclusion is the business thing to do. It will put you to the next level because it brings insights that go and disrupt what's going on in your organization just enough to put yourself into new oceans, new blue skies, to use some older terms. And it makes things a lot more fun because you're learning that much more from people that have great value. And if you go and set up the communication, the creativity, and the empowerment for everybody to be included, even those white males are growing and learning and coming up with new ideas because they bring value too. And now that they have the new insights, they can integrate them with what they know and come up with some great ideas to be able to bounce off the organization. So take a listen to Art and Shaletta. It's about, 15, 20 minutes. Great stories and insights and things that can be done not only to drive cultural competency, but to be able to measure it and analyze it compared to your KPIs, your key metrics that you care about, and the impact from a data-driven perspective. What can happen? I hope that it changes your perspectives for 2021. All the crap that we've been dealing with, that you open yourself up to the potential and the possibilities and drive forward to that new world. Not underwater, like you feel you might have been because of COVID and the social justice issues, but driving forward in the positive, respectful, loving way to be able to drive mission and vision. Congratulations for making it through 2020. There have been worse years on our planet, but this is up there. Congratulations. Now it's time for you to be able to grow and strive and thrive. Happy New Year. Here's Art.
Are you doing fine? Fine, fine, fine. It's a fine day in Minnesota. It's 4:08 right here at News Talk WCCO Radio. It's a Paul and Jordana show. My name is Shaletta Brundage, and I'm filling in. You can catch me every Saturday from 11 to 2 on the Shaletta Show, sponsored by Otto Bremer Trust. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this afternoon, and I am so excited to have Art Johnson with Infinity Systems on the CenterPoint Energy Home Service Plus hotline, talking to us about cultural competency. Now, Art, that is a whole lot of syllables. That's a whole lot of C's. You are going to have to break down for me, a young lady who graduated from public school, what the hell cultural competency is.
Shaletta, I appreciate that. I too graduated from public high school, so we share that in common. This idea of cultural competency, what we're doing is we're measuring specifically that through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when we think about diversity, it's this idea of being, invited to dinner. The thought around inclusion is I'm actually able to speak during the dinner discussion. And equity means basically you're serving something that I can eat. And me being a lactose intolerant individual, serving a cheese plate is probably not in my best interest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing when we start talking about diversity and inclusion and equity, those are three completely different things. You can have people of color at your company, but if they're not included in the conversation, if they're not allowed to climb that corporate ladder and be a part of the discussions where they're making decisions, then you really have missed the mark at your company.
That's exactly right. The challenge is, and particularly here in Minnesota, very homogeneous, trying to find individuals that may not necessarily look like everyone else or like the majority here can be a bit of a challenge. But I can tell you that my oldest son is a graduate of Howard University. And so for those that are trying to seek a diverse workforce, it's something that can be accomplished. It may require a little bit more effort. But all the work that we're doing is specifically finding that work is something that definitely pays off.
And so what you're doing, you've got a 10-minute survey that firms can use to get their diversity goals solidified and on track. Tell me about that.
So it is the ability to measure the level of cultural competency within an organization. So specifically what we're able to do is ask 28 questions, and in 10 minutes find out what the level of cultural competency is in those three elements, diversity, equity, and inclusion specifically. Each one is a different construct that's measured independently. We can quickly tell, is this a diversity issue? Is it an equity issue? Is it it's one of these things where people don't feel included? And the degree to which we can begin to build an ecosystem by which we can measure these things collectively. In other words, if we're asking the same kinds of questions of different organizations, we can quickly get to the point where we establish best practices. We can start to monitor the solutions along the way. We can track progress. So this ecosystem allows us to be able to specifically get at where that organization is at a given point in time. And then we can start to see, all right, are the initiatives that we're plugging in, are they effective? What's being effective? What's not? And then we can decide where we want to allocate our resources.
We're talking to Art Johnson on the CenterPoint Home Service Plus hotline with Infinity Systems. Now, Art, when you get that information and you collect that data, what do you do with it when you give it back to the companies?
Well, so first
how is it used?
So we sit down with the leadership and lay out for them specifically. These are the areas of inclusion. These are the places where there are some challenges. These are where the opportunities lie. These are where we're experiencing some successes. And many times what we end up finding is that these things are communication issues. So, for instance, an organization that has put forth policies and procedures around diversity, equity, and or inclusion, but yet it has never reached the street, so to speak. So the individual contributors may not necessarily be aware of it. What we're finding is that certain leaders within the organization are extremely good at cascading the message. Some aren't. So part of it is finding out where those leaders are that may need a little bit more help in terms of getting the message out, or actually getting them to buy into the message so that we don't get this sort of perfunctory or soft support around an initiative. And we all know what that looks like.
Yeah, it looks like nothing.
Right.
Because
And
nothing happens. I'm sorry, go ahead, Art.
I was just going to say, and the outcome's awful. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
it's a soft, it's like that soft golf clap that you hear when somebody hits a good shot versus that resounding yes. It's a huge difference between the two, and it sends that reverberation through the organization is one that drives adherence, coherence, focus, attention around the things that matter most. And what we're learning, this is what we're particularly excited about, Shaletta, is that when an organization has a higher equimetric score, what we're finding is that it performs at a higher level. In other words, the more culturally competent the organization is, we see decreases in voluntary turnover, we see profitability go up, cost containment get better, efficiencies. Then you move into education, graduation rates, student performance, law enforcement, escalations, community complaints. These things all become much more positive in an organization that espouses but yet follows up and performs at a higher level relative to cultural competency.
Okay, we got to take a quick commercial break, but you don't go anywhere because we have to talk more about this, because this is the thing. Everyone's saying Black Lives Matter. We want to do more. And then when you ask them what they're doing, the tongues are wagging and nothing is happening. What can you do at Infinity Systems to help companies, especially here in the Twin Cities, increase their cultural competence, have diversity, equity, and inclusion? We'll get to that next on the Paul and Jordana Show. After the murder of George Floyd, we saw it. It was on everyone's Twitter page. It was on every company's Facebook page. They changed their profiles, their hashtags. Black Lives Matter was trending. And folks started doing some research because consumers are very smart now. And what a lot of companies were saying and what they were doing didn't match up. And so it's so interesting to talk about cultural competency and diversity, equity, and inclusion with Art Johnson with Infinity Systems, because he's really trying to help organizations, especially here in the Twin Cities, live up to what they espouse. How hard has that been? Has that been an uphill battle for you, Art? Because it's easy to jump on the bandwagon, but it's hard to keep the ship afloat.
It is, Shaletta, and having grown up here, I went to J.J. Hill as a little fella, and as an African-American male, when we moved out to the suburbs, I ended up integrating a elementary school called Pike Lake. And being the first and only person of color was quite the experience. And so I can remember as a little guy, getting in fights on the playground every day. And, but then when it was lunchtime, there was a black cook that would give me a high five every day. And that was that moment of glory, you know what I mean? The big smile and that special moment. And then, as my career kind of progressed, I began to do some interesting work in terms of measurement at IBM and then U.S. West, and then ultimately Medtronic, where we were able to specifically measure the performance of an organization relating to specifically organizational alignment. So we measured, first off, Shaletta, the degree to which an organization aligns around its mission and vision. But what we found was that there was a group of people that felt disenfranchised. And then, lo and behold, that disenfranchisement seemed to play out even more amongst people of color. And so as we did further digging, we started to learn, well, wait a minute. if we can get everybody on the same page and everybody to coalesce around mission, vision, that kind of stuff, we've done something. Mm-hmm. And then as we began unpacking the issues and the challenges of faith that individuals would face, we kept uncovering this diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. And so as we further unpacked that and continued our work with the University of Minnesota and understanding this, 7 years of digging and doing data analysis and correlating different things to begin to figure out how do we begin to ascertain where an organization is relative to this. So when we get that data from an organization, we know by how the leaders respond whether or not this is something they're going to take action on. And what we found in the data that we have, or the work that we've done, is that about 50% do. The others, it's a perfunctory exercise of, hey, look, we checked the box. We've got a sense of where we are. We're comfortable with it. We'll take it from here. Others are willing to roll up the sleeves and do some really interesting work. And we're really excited about partnerships that we have with organizations like RSM, individuals like Paula Forbes, who does phenomenal work in this space. We're doing some work with the Minneapolis Foundation, trying to get this out to school districts so that our teachers are more culturally competent to be able to serve our children more effectively. And the outcomes are outstanding.
And that's what I was going to say. What kind of progress are you seeing? Tell me about some of these success stories, because the fact that we're doing this in schools is just so great. Because I just remember my little brother, he was in second grade, and he had a teacher, and she just did not understand young African-American boys. And so when he didn't do the work or couldn't do the work, she would tell my mother, well, he was lazy and he just didn't try hard enough. And so he failed second grade. And so the next year he had an African-American teacher, and it was like a week later, she told my mother, this boy's trying, but he can't see. He needs glasses. And so my brother got glasses, and everything was fine after that. And it was just a matter of stereotypes. It was a matter of labels. It was a matter of seeing things through a different lens and understanding a different culture, and knowing that just because he's a young African-American boy and he's trying but it's not working doesn't mean that he's lazy. It means that there may be a greater problem there, and let's work together to find a solution. So the fact that you are saying that this is going down in schools is, as a mother of 3 young black boys and a young black girl, I really appreciate that.
So I appreciate where you're coming from. I also pick up on that Southern accent, and I'll just tell you, there was an individual from Texas that shared something. This was an educator that took very seriously these issues around cultural competency and helping students along to become to matriculate appropriately, but then at the same time become productive members of society. And the comment back to him after he got done with his presentation was, as educators, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink. And his comment back was interesting. He just said, well, in Texas, we got this thing called a salt lick.
We do.
Which has a way of getting that horse kind of thirsty, right? So as educators, we have to make our children thirsty. We have to help them achieve that thirst for knowledge and success. And I'll never forget that comment. And let me just take it one step further. In the work that we do in education, specifically, we've done the same thing in corporate America, but in education, what we've seen is a 1% move in terms of the equimetric or orgometric score translates specifically into a 29% decrease in chronic absenteeism. So the correlations are strong. The correlations are meaningful. It's just a matter of going through the process of figuring out where are we today, getting that baseline read, 2, benefiting from the best practices that we've been able to amass over the years, 3, working with either a consultant that you know or somebody that we know, it doesn't matter, but somebody's willing to roll up the sleeves and do the work. And then let us come back in and measure again, because what we're after is what improved. In other words, did your inclusion score improve? If it did improve, what else happened with that? And what we're learning is that it drives retention. So now it's a matter of unpacking the questions and putting the action plan in place and measuring our progress along the way and beginning to hold folks accountable to these things.
Now, folks are listening to you and they're saying, we need that at our company. We need that at our school.
What?
They're saying we need that at our company. We need that at our school. What you're talking about, they're hearing loud and clear. And, they need it. How can they find you? How can they reach Infinity Systems? Because the only way that we are going to do better is if we educate ourselves, we get connected, we get the data, you do the research, you come in, you tell us where we're deficient, and not just that, you don't just leave the paperwork there and walk away, but you show companies and organizations and schools how they can get better. How can folks reach out to you?
Okay, so a couple things. One, this is a shameless plug for my book, The Art of Alignment. Comes out February 16th,
whoop, whoop.
Which speaks specifically to these things. Again, the art of alignment. Otherwise, going to our website, equimetrics.net, that's EQUIMETRICS.net, or orgametrics.net, ORGAMETRICS.net, both of which are products and solutions derived, created by Infinity Systems, and I have a outstanding team, diverse individuals, very passionate about this work, and we're just excited. You mentioned George Floyd earlier. I can tell you that has been a lightning rod. We had launched this early in the year, and when that George Floyd murder took place, literally it was a lightning rod, not only for us, but it became not only something we had to do, but it was an emotional reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that we can do to help really drive this level of cultural competency within organizations and ultimately level the playing field, that's all we want to do.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the Paul and Jordana Show, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us and how folks can get in touch with you. This is definitely something we need in our companies, our corporations, our schools, and in our lives. Art, you've been a blessing. I sure appreciate you. We're going to have you back soon.
I'd love that. Shaletta, thanks for having me. Pleasure to spend this time with you.